Hello everyone, Monday, that means it's time for us to take a look at the markets and what's happening from a business perspective, courtesy of our friends at Capital Legacy, South Africa's #1 provider of wills and estate administration. Chris Gibbons takes a look at our finance. Morning Chris, nice to have you with us once again. Welcome relief for business from government as President Ramaphosa moves the country into level 3 lockdown.
Yes, good morning, Jeremy. Good to be with you. Very much so. And with that comes the restoration of the 350 Rand grant for the poorest of the poor and some measures to support businesses that were hammered during the KZN riots and looting. Alcohol sales for off-site consumption have been restored between Monday and Thursday, as well as leisure travel into and out of Gauteng. And on-site consumption of booze will be allowed up to 8 p.m. in the evening, 7 days a week. Businesses will also benefit from a 3-month deferment in the payment of PAYE, and the payment of excise duty by the booze companies gets exactly the same treatment.
So good news in the short term, but there's also a long-term downside to this.
Well, there you're absolutely right again. It's a question of how we pay for all of this and where that money is going to come from. Just before the president spoke yesterday evening came a warning from the International Monetary Fund. It says that South Africa should aim to reprioritize its budget to offset the cost of relief measures for those hit by the KZN riots. And we also need to accelerate reforms, says the IMF, to foster inclusive economic growth. The IMF has a permanent representative in South Africa. He's called Max Allier, and he says the riots and the looting were a tragedy, no doubt about that, but we cannot lose sight of the fiscal realities. Allier says deviations from National Treasury's projection that debt will peak at 88.9% of GDP in 2026 could put public finances on what he calls an explosive path. In other words, between the extra debt incurred by combating the pandemic and the extra debt incurred as a result of the riots and the looting in KZN, parts of Gauteng, we do not want to see the country dragged into a debt-death spiral. And the only way to do that long-term, to solve that problem long-term, is through the kind of economic reform which sees extensive job creation. The stuff, Jeremy, that we've been talking about for years and years and years. Now, I reckon, is our last chance to get this right.
I see another big South African city is becoming a bit more Eskom free.
Trying to, yes. This time it's the city of Cape Town, which is looking to secure more than 450 megawatts of power supply from renewable sources, as you say, to cut its reliance on Eskom. It's the third big South African city to go this route. It follows Durban, eThekwini, to be more accurate, and of course Johannesburg. A spokesman of Cape Town says it's expected that the bulk of the power will come from solar. Durban's looking for 400 megawatts. Josie wants 150 megs of solar, 50 megawatts of rooftop solar, and the refurbishment of a 20 megawatt gas-fired plant. In total, that is over 1,000 megawatts of electricity that would no longer be required from Eskom. And at the same time, staying on the electricity topic, South 32, the big mining company, has confirmed that it's cut a deal with Eskom for the long-term supply of electricity to the Hillside aluminium smelter. Now, that's been approved by NERSA. It's a 10-year inflation-linked deal priced in rands based on a rate of escalation linked to PPI. What I'm not seeing is the absolute number, exactly how much South 32 will be paying per unit compared to you and me. But I think it's fair to say whatever the number is, Hillside buys a very great deal more electricity than you and me. Aluminium's been called congealed electricity, and not without reason. So their numbers are going to be very different from individual consumers. And we also understand the company is now looking to renewables as well to either augment Eskom or eventually replace it. Which brings me, Jeremy, to the central question as more and more companies, municipalities, and individuals switch away from Eskom to renewables like solar. Who's going to be left for Eskom to actually supply? Jeremy, seems to me that it's just you and me, kid, and I have bad news for you because I've just put in solar on my rooftop, so I'm afraid you're on your own.
No. I've also done the same thing as well. So they're on their own.
That's it.
I see Telecom is losing its CEO, Sipho Maseko, seems destined to leave.
Yes, he is. He's stepping down in June of next year, and he signaled his intention to leave good and early, which is excellent business practice to ensure an orderly transition. No names in the frame yet as to his successor, but I think he's going to be a hard act to follow. He took on the job in 2013, since when he's turned Telecom around. Turned Telecom around, is that the right phrase? More a case of evolving Telecom into a multi-unit business operation, I think, portfolio of businesses. Telecom Mobile in particular going well. One that's often overlooked, the success of Telecom Fiber, which is now called OpenServe, doing very well as well.
Yeah, and that's the way things are going with fiber. That's one of the biggest growth areas, I believe.
Correct. Becoming bigger in many parts of the country than mobile. In fact, it's also cheaper. Surprisingly, it's not just in what we might call the leafy middle-class suburbs, but also in a number of the townships. And once everyone has fiber, they have Wi-Fi. So who needs cellular anyway? As I'm sure you've noticed when you travel overseas, you switch off mobile roaming, you just hook onto the Wi-Fi back at the hotel or the guest house or whatever. And the same thing is starting to happen here in quite a big way.
Travel. I've forgotten about that. Haven't done that for ages. Well, hopefully with the vaccinations increasing, that is going to become a reality again soon, Chris.
Jeremy, I couldn't agree with you more, but there is one problem that needs sorting out first, and that is the South African vaccination record. I don't know about you, Jeremy, but I've had my first jab, second one due very shortly, and all I have to prove that is a small government-issued piece of cardboard. I'm very pleased to have it. Don't get me wrong on that score, very pleased indeed. But is it going to be acceptable at the airport in Athens or the cafe in Paris or wherever you might travel to? Where these places are, in fact, open to South Africans. The rest of the world is moving to digital certification, the so-called vaccination passport, if you like. And you'll have to show it to gain entrance, not just to the country, but also to places like museums, art galleries, restaurants, concert halls, and so on and so forth. No indication yet as to whether our little piece of cardboard is going to be acceptable to those kind of places. We really, really need, in my opinion, a QR-based digital certificate, which can sit in the wallet on our smartphones. And we need it quickly, I think, just as we need a system that will recognize and approve the QR-based certificates on the phones of travelers, hopefully arriving from Europe and other parts of the world to these shores. Business Insider had an interesting piece last week, quoting various travel industry authorities, saying that if we remain paper-based, the queues at the airport are going to get longer and longer and longer.
Yeah. And when I went for my first jab a while back, and they gave me the little, well, not so little actually, it's quite big, green form, which filled out all the details, I had exactly the same thought, because all I could see, Chris, is a customs official in a foreign country looking at this piece of paper going, yeah, and where must I put the stamp? Huh? Yeah, it's a bit silly, this, and you could have written it. How do I know it is genuine? And it's not a
that's exactly the point.
And it's not a difficult
exactly the point.
It's not a difficult thing. I mean, we check into our local or international airline, or we did when we could travel, just with our mobile phone. It's that simple.
Has to happen.
Yeah.
My little card thingy doesn't even have an official stamp. There is no stamp. It's not official. You do this on printer at home in your studio at home. I don't believe it. No, you can't come in. Please go away.
Yeah.
3-week holiday in wherever just went up in smoke at that point. So we've got to get to grips with this.
What are you looking forward to this week, Chris?
Well, it's going to be quite a busy week in several ways, Jeremy. We have locally coming out the PPI numbers. We have the money supply figures. The balance of trade figures also due out. We've had some very good balance of trade figures quite recently. Yes, it's related to the pandemic, but as they say, Alabiki's help. Further afield on the markets, JSE is going to be watching Hong Kong. That's because of pressure on Chinese tech stocks from Beijing. Tencent in particular is taking strain, and that will affect us because of the holding in Tencent by Naspers and Prosus. We saw Hong Kong down quite sharply earlier this morning. And then over in the United States, a very big week ahead. Apple, Microsoft, Google, Facebook, Amazon, and Tesla all reporting their numbers all this week. And throw in this week Hasbro, Pfizer, Ford, McDonald's, Chevron, Caterpillar, and P&G, all this week. The boys on that side of the pond are going to be very busy indeed.
Looks like it. Thank you very much, Chris Gibbons, for the update on the business world, and we'll catch up with you next week again. As I said to you, Business on Mansfield today is brought to you by Capital Legacy, your #1 provider of wills and estate administration. Until next time, you see I'm actually wearing something warmer for a change. Hopefully I can get rid of it tomorrow. Cheers, everybody. Bye-bye.